Hello, my name's Rachel and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I am going to share with you two investments that I have in my investment ISA that are both European investment trusts that have performed exceptionally well for me in the last year and have some really strong 5-year annualized returns. But first of all, I wanted to share with you why I decided to invest specifically in European investment trusts. So let me take you back to 2020. In 2020, I was invested in a lot of growth funds which did exceptionally well in 2020. So for example, I was invested in the Baillie Gifford American Fund, which went up over 100% in 2020, which was fantastic. However, what that has left me with is a portfolio that is very US stock heavy and then also very, very tech heavy, because a lot of the other investments that I had also were heavily invested in the US and then also in tech stocks. Now, there's a lot of fierce debate at the moment as to whether the prices of US stocks and specifically US tech stocks are sustainable. So for me personally, I wanted to diversify my portfolio a little bit and invest in Europe specifically, just to try and mitigate some of that risk that I had with being so heavily invested in US tech stocks. So people might say, why didn't you just carry on investing in global investments? And although I am invested in some global funds and global trusts as well, they do tend to have more of a focus and a higher proportion of their portfolio in US stocks. For example, I am invested in the Scottish Mortgage Investment Trust, which at the moment is around 55% US stocks. So I wanted to step away from this and invest specifically in Europe. I also invested in some UK funds and trusts as well, but today we are talking about the European ones. So the reason I selected these two European investment trusts is because historically they have beaten the market and beaten their specific index, which is a really, really good sign. Now, obviously, this is not always indicative of future performance, and just because they've had some great historic returns doesn't mean this is going to continue. However, I do like to use this as a marker when I'm selecting different investments. And if they do continue to do well for me, then I am happy with them. And these two investments have done very well for me. I will continue to review them probably on a 6-monthly basis, but at the moment it makes more sense for me to be invested in these investment trusts rather than an equivalent index or equivalent ETF, just because at the moment they are beating their index regardless of the additional fees that I am having to pay for them. So both of these investments are held in my investment ISA, or my stocks and shares ISA. Now, the reason that I have them invested in this way is for tax efficient purposes, so that any gains that I make on these investments are not taxable, which is great. So let's get on to my first investment. It is the BlackRock Greater Europe Investment Trust, or BRGE is the code for that. So it's 5-year annualized returns are 22.09%, which is very, very strong, and that is versus its primary benchmark of 13.77%. Now, its primary benchmark is the FTSE All World excluding the UK, and it's adding a nice level of diversity to my overall portfolio. So I'm going to just quickly talk you through the top 3 holdings. Obviously, you can find out the top 10 holdings, but I just wanted to make this video nice and quick for you. So the top 3 holdings are ASML, which is a semiconductor company. Then second is Lonza Group, which is a healthcare company where they're working to prevent illnesses. Then the third one is Sika AG, or Sika AG, which is a chemical company. So nice, diverse holdings within there. Obviously, that first holding is a semiconductor company, which falls into the tech sector. However, the other 2 are not in the tech sector, which makes me feel comfortable because I do feel very heavy on tech in my portfolio at the moment. So moving on to fees now. In all honesty, the fees are the only things that really make me nervous about these investments. So the ongoing charge for the BlackRock Greater Europe Investment Trust is 1.02%. Now, that's quite high when you consider you could be invested in, for an example, an index fund for as little as 0.2%. However, as I said, this has beaten the market with 5-year annualized returns of 22.09% versus that benchmark of 13.77%. So for me, I am happy to pay just over a 1% fee to beat the market. Obviously, I think it's really important to review actively managed funds in a way that potentially is not as important to review passive index ETFs, just because you have to keep on top of them and make sure that those extra fees are worth paying. So I probably will review this investment every kind of 6 months. So I will be reviewing it in the next year. But for now, it's doing really, really well for me, and I'm happy to have it as part of my portfolio. So the second investment that I have has had absolutely ridiculously strong results in the last 5 years. It is the Montanaro European Smaller Companies Investment Trust. Quite a mouthful, and the code for that is MTE. Again, this is one that I'm holding on to in my investment ISA. So 5-year annualized returns for this are 30.14% versus a peer group index of 18.65%. And that peer group index is the Morningstar European Smaller Companies. So what I like specifically about this investment is that it's very different to the BlackRock Greater Europe Investment Trust, because I didn't want to buy 2 European investments that were very, very similar. So this investment focuses on small to mid-cap companies, and the top 10 holdings are very, very different to the ones in the BlackRock Investment Trust. So I think it's very important when you're looking at the investment trusts and investment funds that you want to invest in, that you are checking that their holdings are very, very different, because otherwise you might just be doubling up and you might just be better to just choose one of those investments rather than both of them. So these are very different. So moving now on to those top 3 holdings. So the first one is NCAB Group AB. So they produce printed circuit boards. So again, in that tech industry, but at least it's a European company rather than a US tech stock, which I have got tons of at the moment. Then the next top 10 holding is Sartorius Stedim Biotech. This is actually a company that I currently hold individual shares in as well. It is a healthcare company in the biopharma industry. Then finally, we have Esker SA, which is a software company. So again, in that tech sector, but European. Now, I actually have a separate video on the Montanaro European Investment Trust, which I made a few months ago, because I have been invested in it for a good amount of time. I think probably for the last 9 months I've been invested in this trust. So I've got a separate video on it if you want to check it out and have a look at it in a little bit more detail. So I didn't want this video to turn into a super long one. So I'm just giving you the top kind of headline points for each of these investments. So the ongoing charge for this is 1.2%, which again is on the higher side. I do prefer to kind of cap my fees for investment trusts and funds at under 1%, but if I think that they're worth investing in and I think they have potential to do very well, I'm happy to just edge over that. So at 1.2% we are over that 1% threshold, but for both of these investments, for me personally, I wanted to diversify into Europe, and I felt that there was potential for them to beat the market in the future. So those are the 2 European investment trusts that I have added to my portfolio in the last year to try and diversify and make sure I'm not too US heavy and specifically US tech stock heavy. As I said, I also added some UK investments to my portfolio this year, and then I've also added more ETFs and index funds into my portfolio this year. But I will be reviewing my investment ISA portfolio in the next year. So if you want to see the changes I'm making and the strategy that I plan to follow for the next financial year and for 2022, then please do subscribe to this channel, because I will do lots of videos like this one and share much more detail on my portfolio as a whole. As I say in all of my videos, I am just a DIY investor, learning as I go and trying to do the best for myself without a financial advisor. But But if you are looking for professional advice, then please do speak to a financial advisor about your investments. My risk level and risk tolerance and my goals might be very, very different to yours, so please don't go away and just copy the investments that I am making. Also, just to say, in terms of availability, these trusts are available on most investment ISA platforms, so I hold them in my Fidelity and my Barclays Smart Investor account, but I have just checked and they are available on Freetrade, for example, if that's the platform that you're using, but you have to have the Plus membership to be able to purchase them. And they're also available on, as I said, Fidelity, Hargreaves Lansdown, Interactive Investors. All of the big ones will probably have them available. I've put everything I've talked about in this video in the description box down below. So if you do want to have a look at those codes and check out those annualized returns in a bit more detail, then have a look in the description box down below. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the comments down below. I do try to get back to each and every person that writes a comment on my video. Thank you for all your support in 2021, and I look forward to seeing you in 2022. Bye bye.